Shortly after the German army launched the Second World War, Churchill took over as the British Secretary of the Navy. Faced with the imminent war, Churchill spent a lot of time reviewing new weapons. Despite leading a team of gentlemen, they still judged the direction of the war based on their thinking from the First World War. Throughout the 1930s, various mega-projects were carried out across Europe, including the construction of famous defensive structures like the Maginot Line. In reality, Germany was not idle either, and constructed the extensive 630-kilometer-long Siegfried Line on its western border. This led many to believe that future wars would still enter a trench warfare mode, similar to that of the First World War. In order to break through the Siegfried Line, Churchill led a project to build a giant trenching machine with the intention of using it to directly breach the Siegfried Line and open up an attack route for infantry in the future. Initially, the plan was to build heavily armored personnel carriers to transport soldiers to enemy positions, then disperse and launch attacks. However, after some discussion, it was deemed too dangerous, as the cannons on the defensive line would likely blast the personnel carriers to pieces. Churchill then proposed a machine capable of drilling underground, not only to dig holes, but also to transport some soldiers, allowing them to suddenly emerge from the ground at a particular location to launch an attack. This sci-fi machine was given the nickname White Rabbit. With Churchill's support, the design work for the White Rabbit progressed relatively smoothly. J.H. Hopkins, a ship designer, was responsible for the design work. He abandoned the idea of a machine for drilling and transporting soldiers, instead turning it into a trench-digging machine. According to the initial plans, this machine could advance at a speed of 1 mile per hour, and the plow and conveyor belt structure could transport some soil from the front and belly to the sides of the trench, forming a simple protective wall. At the end of 1939, the designers presented a basic model for evaluation. A demonstration was carried out in a laboratory sandbox, and the officials present were very satisfied with the machine. By pressuring the finance department, they successfully obtained authorization to build 240 machines, with plans for the first batch to consist of 40 large machines and an additional 200 smaller ones. The White Rabbit trenching machine had an extra-long overhead tracked body. Initially, the plan was to install a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, but all Merlin engines were required to be provided to the Air Force. Sir Ricardo, a member of the design team, proposed using the Paxman 12TP 12-cylinder high-speed diesel engine, which could provide 600 horsepower. The large trenching machine weighed approximately 130 tons, with a total length of around 23.6 meters. The front of the vehicle had sharp plows and cylindrical digging tools, weighing around 30 tons. It could dig a trench that was 2.2 meters wide and 3.2 meters deep, providing passage for soldiers, light trucks, Bren gun carriers, and other equipment. After witnessing the rapid advancement of the German armored forces, the British also realized that mobile warfare was unavoidable. However, the White Rabbit still had its uses. The Siegfried Line remained intact, and the White Rabbit could be used to dig trenches and set up anti-tank ditches in other battles as well. However, the quantity required was not as high. In July 1940, the originally planned 240 machines were reduced to 25 large machines and 5 small ones. In November 1941, Churchill personally visited the trenching machine in operation. Further tests showed that it was a very effective mining tool, but it had a major drawback for military use. It could barely turn, and the straight trenches lacked protection. The generals hoped that the trenching machine could make a right-angle turn at a distance of 100 yards, approximately 91 meters, in order to create zigzag trenches. In 1943, countless battles in the Second World War proved that mobile warfare was the primary form of combat. The White Rabbit trenching machine, developed under the mindset of the First World War, had little practical use. Although it was not easy to be targeted by ground fire once in operation, the German Stuka dive bombers could easily hit this over 20-meter-long mechanical monster. The War Office immediately ordered the halt of the development of this meaningless machine. Like some other leaders during the Second World War, Churchill liked to intervene in the development of weapons and equipment. However, Churchill always approached problems with a mindset from the First World War, coupled with the dire situation facing Britain at the time, resulting in a series of impractical projects being initiated. The White Rabbit trenching machine was just one of them. Ultimately, it failed to successfully breach the Siegfried Line, which may have been for the best for the British Army.